Thank you. I'd now like to ask Simon Miller to join us at the podium. Simon is the CEO of Anglicare, and those of you who attended the summit last year will recall that Simon had only been in the position for 12 months, and he explained the strategy that he had developed over those 12 months. And 12 months later, he's implementing that. The interesting aspect is, for everybody in the audience, is that prior to being CEO of Anglicare, he was CEO and senior partner of Boston Consulting Group. So this gentleman is a strategist, if you like, and a person who comes into he's a change merchant. So I thought it would be a good idea, now that he's had 2 years in the role, if we were to sit down and have a conversation for us to check out how smart the man from Boston Consulting is. So, Simon, we're going to have a conversation. Please be seated. So I'm going to lead the conversation with a couple of questions, but he's going to reveal all. So how much would this be worth, when you're charging at Boston Consulting? I think you said that you wouldn't start a project unless it was worth $1 million. Is that right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Simon, last year you said, after a year, it feels like we are rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, but some of our peers are still playing bridge, ignoring the impending collision and the implications. So what is the impending collision and the implications? And did we avoid the iceberg?
So my executive team will know this. I'm a massive fan of the Rest is History podcast. And they've just done a series on the Titanic. Which is incredible, by the way. You should go and listen to it. I'm a huge advocate. And of course, the problem on the Titanic is they turned too late. Like, those people were doomed because they turned too late. And I think actually from your introduction this morning, the reality is that for the traditional models, the iceberg actually is straight ahead, and it probably is too late. We won't actually be able to build enough traditional residential care beds in the timeframe. Just won't happen. So we're going to have to think about different ways. That really is part of the iceberg. The iceberg that hit the Titanic was actually, I think they call it like a double-peaked iceberg. The other peak is the changing needs, and you've been talking about this for years. The boomers a few years ago were coming. They're now here. We actually now have boomers living with us at Anglicare. I'm sure that's true for most of the people in this room. And their expectations and demands are different. I was told this week we have a home on Sydney's Upper North Shore. And unlike every other home in the Anglicare network, we're struggling actually to get that last few percent of occupancy. And I said, well, why is that? And it's because the people on the Upper North Shore of Sydney, they want to stay at home, and they've got the means to stay at home, and they're paying for the extra services to stay at home. And so people are being discharged from hospital and going home rather than going in. And so that's just a little window into what I think is coming, and coming much, much more broadly and much more rapidly at us. That's the iceberg that is probably about to hit.
Last year, you indicated that you were taking a change in strategy for Anglicare, and that you were going to put on pause building any more aged care homes. I hope I'm not out of place saying that.
No, that's exactly right.
So, given our presentation earlier, and also now with the task force recommendations, what is your view in terms of developing new aged care beds?
Look, I think I'm still committed to that. Because I think there is actually a better model than RAC. Now, of course, this will partly depend on how the government writes its definitions in the new Aged Care Act. We're obviously looking at those definitions quite carefully, because if there's a world where simply, the moment you deliver higher levels of care, you have your portion of your village declared a residential aged care home, and you then have all of the regulation and all of the burden that Mike was talking about, well, then it's kind of a little bit crazy to go down this path. You may as well build RACs and get the additional funding. I think that would be very short-sighted of the government. Short-sighted for two reasons. One, if the government genuinely believes in a rights-based model where seniors are at the centre, then it shouldn't actually be about the location of care. You should be funded for the care that you need, and then you should be able to choose the setting in which you receive that care. And if you want to receive that care at home, if you want to receive that care in a village, if you want to receive that care in a group home, if you want to receive that care in a RAC, great. They talk about choice and control in the Statement of Rights in the Act, and if you genuinely believe that, then you should say, no, the level of funding you receive determines the regulation that flows from that. The more funding you get, the higher the obligations. The less funding you get, the lower the obligations. So that's a reasonable principle. I think the second reason why it's short-sighted from the government is that you're going to disrupt the strategy, and I think you said half the people in this room are now doing this type of thing, and you will disrupt that, and that will mean a massive undersupply of new accommodation for older Australians. And so I think the government really needs to rethink that definition.
Cutting to the chase, though, part of the reason why you do not want to build any more aged care homes it's a very simple one. You didn't want that regulation anymore. Is that too bold?
Well, I think the regulation is difficult. I mean, the theme for this Leaders' Summit is really around technology and innovation. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But you know, the reality is, in a residential aged care setting, you don't really have the capacity to do very much. You really are, what you deliver is defined. The outputs you deliver are defined. The way you deliver it is defined. The way you report on it is defined. And so you just frankly don't get innovation when everything is defined. And I actually want the freedom to innovate. I want the freedom to be able to do different things. One of the books that I read when I started, if you haven't read this book, it's called Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. If you read no other book about aged care, it's worth reading. And he really rails against the medicalisation of the end of life. I mean, if you want to sort of summarise the book, that's what it's about. And it's about it's about people's choices and being able to live the life that they want. And he really, really rails against traditional models of care and says, no, we actually need much more freedom. We actually need to really put people in control of their lives, and let's stop trying to over-medicalise it. Now, of course, clinical care is important, it's critical, but let's stop trying to over-medicalise the end of life. And I'm worried that the regulatory framework in residential care. Now, of course, we're still a very large residential care provider, so we will still be doing this. But I want the freedom to be able to innovate, the freedom to be able to use technology differently, the freedom to be able to deliver the services that people want, the freedom to actually deliver a new range of services. I think we're very stuck in this mindset in this sector of, there's home care and there's retirement villages and there's residential care. It frankly needs to be much, much more porous than that. There need to be new products. Even if you think about all the people who live in residential care and all the people who live in villages, 85% of older Australians will still be living out in the community. Of that 85%, most of them won't be getting any form of home care. And so what are we doing for them? How do we actually create vibrant communities that actually support older people out in the community? Those products really, there's a few people trying to do little bits of that here in Australia. There's more of it in the United States, but the reality is it's very nascent here. And so I want the freedom to be able to innovate.
We'll come back to the discussion of outreach to the community. When we last met, in fact, I think it was in one of our village summits and so on, you made the comment that you didn't believe, even with the task force recommendations introducing new funding, that there will ever be the day that you'll be able to make enough money to buy a Maserati out of being in aged care, because the government will always treat aged care like a utility. Mm-hmm. So like an energy utility. They will not want the sector to make a lot of money. Have I got that right?
Yeah, almost. I said they effectively are treating us like a utility by essentially regulating exactly what we deliver. And I actually think with the introduction of things like, is it dollars to care, I actually think what that will mean is there will inevitably be calls from some quarters to say, earning too much. What was it, 7.87%, Stuart? Grant? That's too much. We need to cut that back. And of course, I should point out that amount in terms of return on cost of capital that Grant just pointed out, that's actually still below most people's cost of capital in this room. Most people will actually still be destroying shareholder value if you're a private sector entity, if you're earning those returns. So I'm hugely grateful to the task force for the work that it's done. But even if you adopt everything and you get all of those numbers, in 5 years' time when it's fully in, you'll still be earning below cost of capital. You'll still be destroying value for your owners. I think actually people will be looking at that and saying, oh, that's too much. That's too much. Aged care providers, they shouldn't be allowed to make a profit. It's wrong for aged care. Of course, it's not wrong. We all need it to be able to invest and continue to grow. And so actually, in some ways, I wish government would properly treat us as a utility, because I used to work in the energy sector years ago. In the energy sector, what would happen is you'd put in, you'd say, well, here are the reliability standards, here's the growth, and therefore give me this amount of capital. And the government would look at all of that and they'd say, yep, that's great. And then your job would be to innovate within the amount of revenue that the government let you have to be able to deliver it better and to be able to deliver a better return and be able to deliver a better outcome for your customers. So actually, if we went down the path of being a full utility, we actually might have a little bit more freedom.
A tangential question. Your career is fascinating in as much as you spend a large part of it in government. So you have been a chief of staff, you've been a deputy director in state government and so on. So the discussion that we had around hospitals and beds and ramping and so on, can the state government solve this problem?
Can state government solve that problem?
Well, it's health, isn't it?
Yeah. Let me tell you a little story. I was down on the south coast meeting with the Illawarra local health district. And for those of you who don't know, the Illawarra has the worst bed block, as you call it, as they call it, has the worst bed block. And there's simply not enough aged care beds on the south coast of New South Wales. They just don't exist. And part of the challenge is there's not enough workforce. So even if you built them, you couldn't staff them. And I said, well, what about some kind of relocation payment that you might make available to people who are sitting in a hospital bed? Because I've got space at Castle Hill. And you may very well find there's 10, 20, 30 people who'd say, oh, actually, I'd be quite happy to live in the Hills district of Sydney. That's close to where my other daughter lives, or that's close to where my friends live. And the government representative